We are here and we are back with Dr. Mitchell Levy, PhD. He works with CEOs and C-suite leaders to strengthen how they show up in board level and high stakes environments where clarity, credibility, and alignment directly shape outcomes. And he has a brand new and an amazing book called Executive Abundance: Changing the Rules of the Game for Lasting Success and Impact. So that way you can have this amazing, great legacy that's not about quarterly results, but instead is about transforming the lives of every stakeholder you serve. Exciting stuff. Me and Mitchell go way back. I met him because he was a podcast guest. I think we might have known each other for almost 10 years, but we have not yet met in real life, even though we live like a couple of hours apart.
We're this close to making that happen, Robert.
But he has amazing ideas, especially your memorable C-pop customer point of possibilities and building stakeholder trust. He's founded 20 companies. He has over 500 interviews with thought leaders, and we're going to get to clarity, credibility, consistency, and commitment today. So, Mr. Dr. Mitchell, how the heck are you?
The doctor thing is so new. It's great to hear you read that. It's still actually so new since I just recently finished the PhD process. I defended my dissertation, which is that final step. The one after that is the graduation piece of it. But it's amazing. You know, if anyone who's gone to school and you take the final exam, the dissertation defense is the final exam, essentially. But instead of grading based on, pass-fail type questions, the dissertation defense is done to your dissertation committee, who are your peers plus an academic, who actually then need to approve that your stuff is worthy. So anyway, how am I doing? I'm doing great. And the end is I have been working so hard to make this happen for the last 5 months. I mean, crazy hard every day. It's like 12 to 16-hour days almost every day of the week since November. It's taken me a little bit longer to sort of unwind, because I've trained my body that free time means, okay, dissertation's done, and so I'm looking forward to relaxing and allowing the abundance of life to come back in, not just me talking about it and coming up with patterns that I discovered in my research and in deploying the dissertation and the book.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, because when you're in that real grind mode and you have a deadline, you have a project, like that is kind of controlled, focused scarcity, isn't it? And for you to be talking about executive abundance, well, you have to get to that point where you practice what you preach. And to help us understand, like, I think we've come across this term of abundance, right? Where you have like all these resources and all these possibilities and you can do things and you're not limited. But this term executive abundance, I feel like I should understand it, or I feel like I almost know, but I feel like there's maybe like a secret sauce built in. So this term executive abundance, what is that?
So, well, first, because you mentioned abundance by itself, let me tell you what most people think abundance is, and it's not. People think abundance is I have more than enough resources, more than enough money, and I'll be happy because I'm abundant. And that's a misperception of what abundance really is. That's not what people mean when they say abundance. But now let me jump to executive abundance. Executive abundance is bringing abundance, so bringing happiness and success. So let's define abundance with the words happiness and success to 5 different stakeholder groups. And that's really what executive abundance is. If you're running a company, your job is to make more than just the investors, one stakeholder group, happy. Your job is to bring abundance, bring happiness, bring success to 5 different stakeholder groups. Happy to walk through them, but that's really fundamentally, we end up getting what we measure. And if the only thing we measure is quarterly financials, then what happens is we start putting our incentive systems, our structures, our results, our processes around doing things, in this case, quarterly. And I call that short-termism. We end up having a really short-term orientation to everything. However, if we change our measurement systems, which is really what I'm doing with executive abundance, let's focus on measuring more than just one of 5 stakeholder groups' success. Let's make sure we bring the other 4 into fold.
Ooh, very nice. Well, I'm fascinated already, and I think that I think all the time about, like, what did I think was so amazing about Mr. Mitchell, right? Because when I met you 10 years ago, you were just one of hundreds, thousands of podcast guests. I was like, who's this guy with the hat? And I can't remember what.
I don't think I had that 10 years ago, did I? I think
I'd have to. I think. Well, 10 years ago, I didn't see you on camera, so I have no idea.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's so funny. I look at some of the videos I recorded before I started consistently wearing a hat. I'm like, who is that guy?
I don't recognize him. Right. But I'm impressed with the recurring attention to detail, right? What you just mentioned there was like a lot of people are short term, and we have to, like, as leaders, look at this bigger picture, and that's hard to do. And some people, they're really like vague and they don't get a lot accomplished. They get stuck in that academic land of kind of just like keywords, buzzwords. And when I look at you and like your tribe, so to speak, there's a lot of like, well, what is the first impression? And what am I known for? What does my LinkedIn profile look like? And then a lot of kind of like iteratively looping through and saying, like, based on what I say and what hits, run it through the AI and go back and update it. And what's, I think, really impressive about you is you and your ideas, when I put them into ChatGPT, AI knows all about you, right? Because you're on podcasts and you're posting on the LinkedIn and just getting all the information out, where it's like a lot of people, a lot of podcast guests, I put in their name and their terms and it, like, AI has no idea. So I think that's just off the bat really powerful when you want to like sell your ideas and talk about these 5 stakeholders that you mentioned in your book, right? There's family, employees, customers, investors, and community. It's like, it's not a one-shot deal. We have to keep on refocusing and thinking through how our messaging will be received and perceived. So, I mean, tell me about what you have to say about that. Like, is it accidental? Are you doing this on purpose? Like, how do we get the right people to listen to us and have that good first impression?
Oh, God, you asked like about 3 different questions in that. I love your curiosity. Before I jump into executive abundance, let me answer your question, right? I'm going to answer your implied question. Your implied question is, Mitchell, I type in your stuff into AI and it knows all about you. And what most people, the mistake we've been taught up until the AI era, we've been taught that the most important thing we could do is have an idea, copyright the idea, put IP protection around that idea, and then we'll get known for that idea, or we'll make lots of money for it. And when AI started hitting the thing in 2023, the first words out of my mouth when I saw what AI was going to be is, thought leadership is now ubiquitous. Anyone who wants to be a thought leader, anyone who wants to have an idea, whether or not they have practical knowledge, experience behind it, all they have to do is know how to ask the right questions. They just need to know how to prompt. So if that's the case, instead of sort of bottling up your ideas. I was trying to think about which B word was going to be the right one. Instead of just bottling up ideas, keeping it to yourself, not telling anyone else because you think they're going to steal it. The goal is to jump on Robert Plank's podcast, to jump on other people's podcasts, to have a newsletter that consistently goes out, to talk about this in both in writing and in person, talk about this in such a way that when the feeder systems that feed AI, because AI is constantly consuming data, they're actually seeing who you are. So that when somebody asks a question, and that question happens to be about something that you're talking about, that you get bottled in as one of the thought leaders in that space. And starting in 2023, the rules absolutely changed. I mean, I often, as one of my companies, which I don't actually even advertise, I still own it, is a book publishing company. We have published 750 books. In the old days, I've never published these authors. I had authors come to me and say, you need to sign an NDA before I tell you the book title. Now, listen, if you're watching this podcast and that offends you, it should. And if you're the person that came to me, listen, I don't mind offending you, because you can't tell me the idea for your book title is something I need to sign an NDA for, right? Absolutely ludicrous.
Right.
Nowadays, if you have a great idea, I love that. The goal is to be able to put that idea out there, to reinforce it, to show up everywhere. And as you mentioned, one of the places people look for if you're in business is LinkedIn. So have it consistently show up on LinkedIn, have it consistently show up in social media, have it consistently show up in the AI search engines. And when you start seeing that level of consistency, which, by the way, is one of the components of the executive abundance engine, what happens is it reinforces who you are. It shows that this is who you are, where you're playing, what makes sense. So anyhow, that's the answer to that question. I'll answer a second question. Second question is, for me, the thing that I like, and I think that attracted us, because it's something you're good at as well, is looking at chaos and being able to put a framework around it. That's something you and I do really well, right? So because of our experiences are different, I look at a different form of chaos than you do, right? But what we do is look at chaos and then we put a structure around it. We put a pattern around it, and we make it easy to do. And what you and I also do is we not only make it easy for other people to follow. If they're a do-it-yourselfer, like, great, hey, here's the models, just go and run with it. But if they want it done for you, that's mostly where you spend your energy, the done for you side. And for me, it's the done with you, because I want to bring people along the way. What's interesting is we see the world, we see the chaos, we put framework around it. And so what I'm working on now with Executive Abundance is the biggest framework I've ever created and focused on, because it's talking about the longevity of humanity, and it's one of many antidotes to the problem with humanity today.
This is blowing my mind, and it brings up some of the, I don't know how rational or irrational of a fear it is, this idea of like losing our intellectual property, right? Because like, even in software, right, there's like open source, or if you put out anything WordPress, they expect you to make it GPL. And then this whole thing with AI gobbling up all the information, it's like you have this concern of like, okay, well, if I have things to say, if I put out a book, then what's even the point of any kind of copyright, because the AI is just the plagiarism machine. And the open source guys have always sold to us this done for you idea, haven't they? They said, hey, if you're Red Hat Linux and you put out your own Linux distribution, you make it free. And then if someone wants support, that's where you make your money. And it seems kind of detached from those of us that want to make money. And so like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, does it kind of make you uncomfortable, or does it scare you, this idea that like anyone can copy you, but they don't really copy you in your social circle, but it's also like weirdly inevitable in a way? I'm so confused about it sometimes.
No, it's funny. I lean in that direction as well. I think there's at least 3 or 4 macro trends that you're looking at. If thought leadership is ubiquitous, that doesn't mean thought leaders go away, right? What it means is it's harder to immediately go out there and be a thought leader of a huge audience. Now, the most important thing, and you and I have talked about this a lot, I don't think your audience has to be huge. Your audience has to be big enough for you. Big enough for you is that there's enough people in your circle where you're having fun, you're putting things out there, people are listening to you, you're having good engagement, and you're making enough money to enjoy a good life, right? That's that. So what happens is you may one of the best ways to do thought leadership is to share the cred dust of others. So to be able to share the ideas, thoughts, and actions of others, you can actually be, in the old days, read other books. In today's world, you could say, hey, give me 5 people in my space. What are their best ideas? Now, you don't have to use their names, but what I have to tell you is the respect that happens when you actually share somebody else's ideas and put your attribution on it, and then your spin on what they say. If I'm consuming that data, I'm going to respect you more if you say it's from somebody else than if you say it's from you. Right? Because what happens from a credibility perspective, if you actually say with integrity externally, this is what I am, this is what I did, but internally you have no clue what's going on, I'm going to feel the vibes. I'm going to start running from you really quickly. So the thing that becomes really interesting is, who are we tomorrow as a race, as guys like you and I? Who are we as thought leaders, right? And I think what happens is we end up moving the tribe of who we work with as the audience who can consume and benefit from us as they grow in a technology space. Their needs are different, their wants are different. And what we need to do is continually reinvent who we are. And are we going to come up with stuff that's brand new? In many cases, no. Like my book publishing, I published 750 books. I would come up with a new imprint. Imprint in book space is a new division. So I'd come up with a new division. Now I would have a new methodology that would make it yet a little bit easier to publish a book. And I'd have advocates who would join one division versus another, right? Oh, I don't want to do that stuff. I want to do this other stuff, right? And in real terms, I don't want to do a Think Aha book, which has 140 Aha messages. I want to do a 42 Rules book, which has 42 500-word articles, right? And so, and different people would have different ideas, and that's fine because that's the way the world is. Your job as a marketer, you particularly, is to, now for those who are listening, I wanted to say your job, Robert, but then I thought, wait, it's not just Robert. If you're listening to this, you're a marketer. Whether you call yourself one or not, you're a marketer. So your job, if you're watching and listening to this, is, well, how do you make sure that your audience sees you? Robert brought it up right up front. If you're looking at other businesses, LinkedIn. You also need to have a good website. That website needs to be consistent with how you show up on LinkedIn. Guess what? AI needs to be consistent with how you show up on LinkedIn and in your website. And what happens is, it's important for you to know your audience and be able to be a step in front of them. And that's, Robert, what you do particularly well. That's what I think I do well as well.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's a lot to think about, is having these kind of 3 spaces aligned, right? Like your LinkedIn or whatever social platform, and your website and AI, and being someone that has almost like a plug and play opportunity of sorts, right? You mentioned about, like, there's the Think Aha, or there's the social compliment. So you say, I'm not just someone who's pontificating about this ideas. I have a solution, and it might be something new that it's like there's some elements of what you've heard before, but hey, this also has a few new things to wake you up and say, if you've been struggling and trying to piecing together yourself, hey, here you go, plug into social compliment or these Think Aha books. And then there's that aspect of the leadership of saying, well, hey, I've already kind of blazed part of the path for you. Now it's your turn to come and jump on board. And so I want to make sure that we focus on what's important to you, right? There's this executive abundance idea, which you say is this alignment of clarity, credibility, and purpose in action. And I'm also impressed that you have like a graphical imagination, right? Even when I am saying, well, I've got to explain my offer. I've got to explain my offer, and I'm about a page, and you're like, hey, Robert, make this graphic so that way if someone is more of this executive sort of level, if they only have 10 seconds to see what your offer is, instead of 10 minutes reading a page, have the graphic. That way you can see, like, you have a plan, you've thought this through. And so in these last few minutes, like, is there anything maybe uncharted that you feel like I don't even know to ask you about as far as executive abundance or anything visually you want to show about it?
Thank you. I'll share the visual for the executive abundance. So executive abundance is essentially a 4x5 structure. And there's the way I would say it academically, and I won't get too geeky. It's the executive abundance engine, which are the four components you talked about, which is clarity, credibility, consistency, and commitment, and that is applied to the executive abundance ecosystem, right? So what does that mean? And what I've proved academically is that those two segments, the engine and the ecosystem, they are ordered in the way that makes sense, and they are interdependent, right? So on the engine, if you're missing any one of these, or if one of them goes bad, clarity, credibility, consistency, or commitment, everything starts going bad. And in my research, which I did between 2019 and 2020, 98% of humans, particularly thought leaders, don't have clarity. Well, if you don't have clarity, if you can't articulate in 3 to 9 words where you're executing on your purpose, none of the other stuff's going to work. You might get lucky and make it happen, but all of a sudden having that level of clarity is going to change everything. If you don't then demonstrate it credibly, which is kind of what you mentioned, Mitchell, you show up the same or everywhere. That's just me showing up credibly because you can consistently see me in the platform that people want to see. What I also mean by consistency is that I'm not one person in one place and a different person somewhere else. I consistently show up. And then the commitment is making sure. It's really funny. I had a CEO go, "Oh, I need to hire you, Mitchell. I've got 2 of my staff members. They need to replace me in about 3-4 years. I need you to come in because I want them to be ready." Right. And I hadn't heard from her in 6 months. I got an email this morning. It's so funny how this stuff works. And she goes, "We're having scarcity right now. I can't hire you." Well, a commitment means we need to, whether the money's irrelevant, right? What's relevant is we need to make sure that we show up the same way in times of success and times of scarcity. And then on the bottom line, what I want you to think about, the most important thing is that you take care of your family and yourself. If things are going poorly, like if you're not in good health or things are not good with your family, it's kind of hard to lead, right? If we then do a good job there, we need to make sure that we not just empower our employees. Most companies don't empower their employees. We not only have to empower them, we need to respect them. Respecting employees, by the way, means not if they can do their job from home. We prove that most employees in the world can do their job at home. We don't force them into the office because that's the only way we know how to measure if they're doing their job, right? We empower them and we respect them. If we take care of the employees, they'll take care of the customers. Now, if we take care of the customers, they'll take care of the investors. And specifically what executive abundance is showing is that that investors are fourth, not first. In today's world, investors are the only thing that matter. When I sat on the board of a public firm for 9 years, every time I answered a question for the board, I had one and only one hat on. I had fiduciary responsibility for the investors to do what the investors wanted. We need to encourage our boards, our CEOs to say, "Hey, listen, let me look at a different picture. Let me look at those I just mentioned 4 in the 5th is community, making sure that it's virtual or physical." And if you're running a small business, you can start doing this today. You own this. You have the ability to do that. And that's what Robert, really executive abundance is one of my dissertation committee members said it's the antidote to one of the problems that we have in society today. And that is, well, let's think about the bigger picture. Let's think about the ecosystem of where we play and interact. And let's make sure that in our ecosystem, we've done the best job we can to bring abundance to all aspects of that ecosystem.
Very nice. Well, this is a timely idea and a solution, because any time I talk philosophically with a person, including you, about AI, it's always the same handful of issues, right? There's, well, is it garbage? Is it taking my ideas and just like adding a bunch of noise? Well, when you have that kind of the graphic, the structure, then you've thought it through, you simplified it. And then with AI, there's always the dehumanization aspect, right? Will the world be overly optimized so that it's only the investors that get thought of? Will humanity just not matter? And, money and numbers and ones and zeros, that's what becomes of it. So it's great that you've thought some of these things through. And I think a lot about the way that you graphicalize even this idea that you just showed us, right? And there's even like an implied step-by-step process, right? Once you figure out clarity, it leads to the rest. Once you figure out family, employees, customers, investors, it leads to the rest. So it's great from like a learning perspective, but then from an inside baseball perspective, it's like, well, when you have these ideas that you want to communicate to anyone, right? If you're in whatever kind of leadership role, hey, you make it into this graphic, and then the communication implementation of it can be small or large, right? You can show this graphic, you can give a two-minute talk about executive abundance if that's all you had. But if you had to give a 2-hour presentation, then you could really unpack that. So it's just so great to see your ideas come alive. And if someone said, okay, this idea of executive abundance, I need it, but I'm not sure if I'm the person for it, or how does somebody know if they're a good fit or to take some next steps about executive abundance? Should they take a course of yours? Should they contact you? How should someone get on this executive abundance train?
Man, you have two different questions there, so I'll answer both. If you want to immediately get on executive abundance, AI will help you. Although my encouragement is of this book, this is the 66th book I've written and the most impactful book I've ever done, the most important book I've ever done. And so if you read that book, and it will be available initially in hardcover, Audible. You and I talked about the Audible version. I've read that myself, so you could feel my energy, and in Kindle. If you read that, you'll know right away if this is the right fit for you. You'll know who to bring on into your team. And if it turns out that you wanted someone like me to be involved in helping you with executive abundance, go to my website. It's mitchelllevy.com, mitchellevy.com. There you can actually see the things I'm doing, the offers I have going on, and if you want, book time on my calendar. And so that's mitchellevy.com.
And that's one of my favorite sayings of yours. That should be like, I don't know if that's a trademark or a chapter title or a mini book in the future, but getting time on the calendar, right? It's such a simple, non-pressurized step to take. If it makes sense to have that conversation, just grab time on the calendar, right? For whatever purpose, to get to know each other, to pursue a path, to catch up, you grab time on the calendar. And the way that someone can grab time on your calendar is by going to mitchelllevy.com. That last name is Levy.com. It's Dr. Mitchell Levy, PhD, global credibility expert, so that the success you're scaling today doesn't undermine the legacy you're building tomorrow. And if you're a fast-growing CEO or someone who is part of a leadership team, then you can click on the appropriate button and get on the right path. Check out the book, but most importantly, grab time on that calendar with Mr. Dr. Mitchell. But before I let you go, Dr. Mitchell, it's time for the scary part of the podcast where I try to stump you a little bit. I try to put you on the spot, not unlike how that dissertation defense team might have done to you, where I ask you about a fun or interesting quote or lesson that has served you. So what comes to mind as far as a fun or interesting quote or lesson?
Well, let me give you I'll give you both. My interesting quote is actually from the book. A leader's legacy is felt in the success of their stakeholders. Think about that. Legacy is not something that comes tomorrow. Legacy is something that is felt today. If you're running a company with 500 or 50,000 employees, there are 50,000 conversations happening at dinner time every night about you. That's your legacy. Okay, so that's my favorite quote. I'm going to leave with the most interesting thing that happened to me 18 months ago. You and I have talked about that, but I want to share it. I understood, I've known this my whole life, but I didn't really understand it and apply it to 18 months ago. And the simple statement is, sell them what they want, deliver what they need. And that's where executive abundance came from. Because clarity and credibility, I spent 5.5 years selling people what they needed. Clarity and credibility are what people need, not what they want, because they think they already have it. So instead, bringing people executive abundance and showing them a way to allow their ecosystem to really have abundance, that's what I started focusing on seriously and finished my dissertation on in my research 18 months ago is when I really fine-tuned that focus. So just remember, sell them what they want, deliver what they need.
What a cool idea. So few of us have that amount of empathy, right? We just think about ourselves and being very one dimensional, but you think about, well, the messaging I'm saying, how is it received? And you have that different playing around with the ideas and reiterating and nuance. And it's wonderful to hear about and think about. So we've been speaking with Dr. Mitchell Levy, PhD, creator of the Executive Abundance Leadership Framework. He's a global credibility expert, executive coach. He helps leaders align purpose with performance. He's a 2-time TEDx speaker, international best-selling author of 66 books, and that latest book is called Executive Abundance, Changing the Rules of the Game for Lasting Success and Impact. You can search it on Amazon. We'll have a link in the show notes for the podcast, and you can also find an easy path to that by going to mitchelllevy.com. You grab time on the calendar while you're there. And thanks, Dr. Mitchell, for showing up, stopping by, blowing our minds, and giving us so much to think about ourselves, our business, our families, AI, the future, so much more. Thanks for doing it. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Robert, thanks for having me. It's so good to have you in my life.
Oh, man.